When you think of a cryptid, whatever creature comes to mind most likely is one that isn't proven to exist by science, and there may very well be no physical evidence to substantiate it whatsoever. But what if I told you that there is at least one cryptid that not only is confirmed to have existed without question by modern historians, but that this creature had hundreds of human victims? This is the story of the beast of Gevaudan. If you think a simple life in a mountainous French village sounds like a dream come true, you wouldn't have believed that for long if you were in Gevaudan, France, anytime between 1764 and 1767, when a bloodthirsty monster was busy wreaking so much havoc throughout the peaceful countryside that even King Louis had to get involved. It sounds like the plot of a spooky campfire story, but it was all too real to the people of Gevaudan. It all began in the early summer of 1764 when a young woman saw a creature she described as like a wolf, but yet not a wolf, as it attempted to prowl around the cattle she was tending. As it turned out, it was the bulls of the pasture charging at the beast and chasing it away that saved the woman's life. This became evident as only a short time later, on June 30th of the same year, the beast would claim its first recorded human victim. However, it can be easily argued that the beast had already killed prior to this, because its first documented victim was noted to have been devoured by the ferocious beast, which would suggest and imply that perhaps there had already been other victims at this point. Regardless of when its first victim was killed, it was nowhere near finished with its reign of terror and was in fact just getting started. Over the next few years, it would prey upon one person after another, and more often than not, the beast did not leave any survivors. In the official death reports, it is said that the predator had devoured and consumed many of its victims before their bodies were finally discovered, and that it usually had seemingly focused its attack on the victim's head and neck area. The fatal injuries ranged from a torn-out throat to even total decapitation. Survivors were left maimed and mangled and most certainly traumatized by their encounter. Although an exact number is unknown, it is estimated the victims eventually totaled into the hundreds. What was particularly unusual about these attacks is that they mostly occurred in the daytime, and the creature apparently had very little fear of people, as it reportedly came straight into a village and attacked on at least one occasion. In another report, the creature's behavior is notably bold even for a large predator of its power. It was stated that the animal would repeatedly return even after having been driven off, like it refused to give up on its hunt, and that it stalked and paced at a distance waiting for an opportunity to strike. But what did this monstrous beast of Gevaudan look like? What were the terrified villagers reporting seeing? That's where things get tricky, as the descriptions, although largely consistent, don't seem to point to any known animal with any surety. Most reports describe the beast as something like a wolf, which were common in the region at the time. However, the similarities get muddled from there. The people that do relate to it as being wolf-like describe it as much larger than a normal wolf, but that it had some other defining trait that set it apart from a normal wolf. Reports stated that it had a stripe down its back, a tail longer than a wolf's, and that it was around the size of a calf or a small cow. It also was consistently said to leap and jump unlike anything else, and its movements were decidedly strange and even unnatural. Some of the common theories are a lion or a hyena, which of course are not native to France, but were owned in private collections by the French nobles. Many believe it was some exotic predator that had escaped or been turned loose, which would potentially explain not only its not being recognized by witnesses, but also perhaps why it seemed to have little to no fear of humans. It could also be argued that the reason it attacked humans to begin with is because it had in fact been a sort of caged pet at one time, that associated humans with food in its mealtimes. Another popular theory is that it was at the very most just a particularly large or perhaps deformed lone wolf, that as a result of being shunned by any packs, turned to the easy prey of humans as a last resort for survival. Still, several reports state that the beast would periodically stand upright and walk on two legs, leading to a conspiracy theory that the beast of Gevaudan wasn't an animal at all, but a deranged human man donning the skin and fur of a wolf to carry out his sadistic murders. There is, however, no evidence to support this idea. No matter what the creature truly was, its killing spree eventually reached its end in 1767. How the beast was finally defeated is a tale as bloody and savage as the carnage the beast itself left behind. Throughout the years the animal was on its rampage, many hunters went into the forests after it, determined to be the one to slay the monster and potentially benefit from the recognition and rewards that would surely be offered. As newspapers throughout Europe covered the story and by extension exaggerated or sensationalized the beast, some suggested the beast had supernatural powers, which led to mass hysteria. Eventually, King Louis declared that the state would help find and kill the man-eating beast that had ravaged the country for far too long already. Troops were deployed to hunt the beast down, and their captain nearly was able to shoot it. However, it escaped by swimming across the river. After their failure, 2 professional wolf hunters and their hounds were sent next to kill the beast, and together they managed to kill essentially every wolf in the entire region, except for the actual culprit. With every dead wolf, the attacks only just continued. After their apparent failure also, they were replaced with an experienced gunman who organized a great hunt that led to the famous true story of the maid in Gevaudan, in which a 20-year-old woman successfully speared a great wolf that leapt at her. Shortly after these events, a large male gray wolf weighing 130 pounds and being over 5.5 feet long was killed, and it was declared to be the fearsome beast responsible. So confident they were that they had finally killed the correct animal that they decided to hunt down and kill its entire pack, including pups, for good measure. After receiving a large sum of reward money, the man who had killed the wolves had the male wolf stuffed and exhibited in Paris. However, the attacks would carry on again shortly thereafter, proving that if this wolf and his pack had been man-eaters at all, they certainly weren't the only ones. When word of a dozen more attacks reached King Louis, he shushed the messengers, not wanting to hear of the failure of his top hunters, and made it clear to all that would listen that the beast certainly was dead. From that point on, newspapers did not report on the killings ever again, despite the prevalence of continued attacks. Knowing the court would no longer be of any assistance to them, locals had to take matters into their own hands, but with no success for some time. It is estimated that over 2,000 wolves were killed in the region during those few short years, and apparently many dogs were also killed for the same reasons. Its many close calls had finally made the beast cautious, and its attacks became much more careful, although still of extreme frequency. Finally, after years of terror and paranoia, the beast was seemingly killed once and for all during an organized hunt on June 19, 1767. The remains were loaded into a wagon and sent for examination by a surgeon, but by the time the carcass arrived, decomposition made it impossible to perform a proper and conclusive examination. The doctor was only able to report that the creature seemed to be like a wolf or like a dog. The carcass was then displayed for nearly 2 weeks and viewed by crowds and onlookers. After these events, the carcass was then sent on to the king. In one report, it is said that the creature, which had been poorly stuffed by this point, reeked of decay so intensely that the king rejected accepting the remains. However, this is in contrast to another testimony that stated that the king was away at the time and instead a naturalist examined the creature, and, in spite of the dilapidation to which the worms had reduced it and the fall of all the hairs, in spite of the bad odor which it gave off, after a serious examination, judged that it was only a big wolf and demanded the remains be buried at once. Oddly, the naturalist became so ill after the examination that he was bedridden for 16 days, and then went on to blame his poor health and disease he suffered for the next 6 years, solely on having examined the beast. Regardless of what became of its corpse, the beast had evidently finally been truly killed, as all the attacks immediately ceased. While it would seem that the beast of Gevaudan was in fact no more than a large wolf, or perhaps several different wolves responsible for the attacks, the story doesn't end there. In 1952, a historian uncovered an autopsy report for the creature which read in part, "This animal which seemed to us to be a wolf, but extraordinary and very different by its figure and its proportions from the wolves that one sees in this country." Apparently, this opinion was shared by the more than 300 people who gathered to see the slain creature. The report is so detailed as to even include the dental features of the creature, which point to some kind of canine animal. So what exactly was the beast of Gevaudan? We may never know for certain, as even its autopsy results raise perplexing questions. What about this one animal was so extraordinary and different from any other wolf? The theories range widely. What we do know for certain is that it was not unheard of for nobles to keep exotic animals in their own personal zoos, and theoretically, something like a lion or hyena could have escaped. It also has to be noted that wolf attacks were simply commonplace at the time, due to humans threatening their food supplies and encroaching on their territories. Or what about the modern-day Italian wolf, which is known to live in France in small numbers? Despite generally being smaller than the Eurasian wolf of France, they most often have the reddish-gray color with a lighter chest with dark backs that was reported with the beast. Due to genetic isolation, they have distinctive skull shapes and a unique gene mutation that sets them apart from other wolves. Could this odd-looking wolf have been the beast? Of course though, this is a cryptid channel, so we're going to take a look at some of the other, more polarizing theories out there. While this real-life horror story and historic event has doubtlessly been the inspiration for countless werewolf or dogman tales, there are some other explanations perhaps a little easier to accept as a possibility. Like, for instance, could this beast have been the last of its kind, a now extinct relic from a different time altogether that somehow outlasted the rest of its species and survived with the small population tucked away in these rural regions? What kind of extinct creatures could possibly match the description of the beast of Gevaudan? The Eurasian cave lion, while closely related to the modern lion, was substantially larger. Most importantly, it went extinct recently enough to have overlapped with humans and be featured in cave drawings. The drawings, along with their skeletons, have been discovered in France itself. Some specimens that have been unearthed were even extraordinarily preserved by permafrost. These lions, unlike of what we think of today, apparently either had no manes or very little manes. Likely, they had a stripe down their back and a very long tail ending in a tuft. Very like some descriptions of the beast. Sticking closer to the canine reports, there are various types of extinct wolves across Europe, whose extremely large size and unusual body shapes and proportions could possibly explain why the beast was often described as being wolf-like, but yet different. For example, the dawn wolf was not only larger than modern wolves, but had strangely short legs. Another type of wolf was not only larger than average, but had a unique set of teeth, and was found in France as well. There also is the prehistoric dire wolf, now famously cloned and brought back to life, that stalked its prey with its formidable size and strength. However, this theory is easily put to rest considering that, to date, there is no evidence suggesting that dire wolves were ever in Europe, let alone France. And lastly, the strange and unusual bear dog that roamed Europe seems to share a striking resemblance to the drawings and various depictions of the beast. Would this bizarre-looking animal be confused as wolf-like but not quite normal, and of an exceptionally huge size? The bear dog was certainly giant, estimates ranging from between 220 pounds to well over 1,000 pounds. His teeth were similar to a canine's, but with crushing molars like that of a hyena. They had cat-like bodies suited to jumping, exceptionally long tails, and their skeleton suggests that they would have been suited to any hunting style, from chasing down and mauling their prey to biting down on the throat after an ambush attack. For certain, this animal would strike fear into anyone who laid eyes on it. But what do you think the beast of Gevaudan was? Do you agree with any of the common theories, or do you have your own idea? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next time at the Crow's Nest.